This edition of the Weightlifting World Podcast is brought to you by Warrior Princess, apparel and accessories for ladies in weightlifting, strength sport and CrossFit, also featuring the official Nadezhda Evstekina clothing range. Check out Warrior Princess on the web at www.wpwear.uk.
Welcome to this edition of the Weightlifting World Podcast. Today we're very grateful to be joined by the CEO of British Weightlifting, Ashley Metcalfe. Hi Ashley, how's your day been?
Yeah, excellent, thank you. It's the sun's shining up here in Leeds, so it's a bit of a bonus, really.
Great, excellent. Better than down here then. Listen, we really appreciate you joining us today. Obviously, I've known you for a while through weightlifting in this country. And you've always been someone that's been very straight with me. Never felt like I've been BS'd by you. And so it's really good to have you to speak to us, to talk about the organisation, talk about the sport in this country as it stands now, and as you see it moving forward in the future. So just initially,
it's a pleasure.
Just tell us a little bit about your background, and you know how you heard about the role at British Weightlifting, and what enticed you to put in an application.
Yeah, my sporting background is not weightlifting at all. Although, I came from a professional background of 17 years in professional cricket with Yorkshire and then latterly with Nottinghamshire. But throughout that time, we obviously had an impact with training, and weightlifting was very much part and parcel of our general fitness. So yeah, I had a little bit of knowledge, but very limited knowledge of Olympic lifting at that stage. When I got too old and too fat to play professional sport, I had to go into the real world and in the commercial world and find a suitable job. I ended up in several businesses that I would predominantly were my own, but you'd grow and develop, and then they would get swallowed up by bigger companies or you'd sell on. But deep down, my passion was always for sport. And I wanted at some stage a different challenge in life, but a challenge that evolved around sport and to get back into that environment, which I loved. And, I'm a great believer that life's there to be enjoyed. And, you should wake up every morning and want to go to work. And I've found, certainly since I've been involved in sport and certainly since I've been involved in weightlifting, that's very much the case again.
That's great.
It was I just think for weightlifting, when the opportunity came up, there were two things. One, I'd really enjoyed watching it at the Olympics. I thought it was a fascinating sport, really exciting, really intense. And I thought there was a challenge there. It's perhaps a best kept secret. If anything, the more I got involved, perhaps a secret when it came to other sports. But it had a huge amount to offer. And I firmly believe that, moving forward, it's rare that you can come into a sport, a traditional Olympic sport, with a blank sheet of paper and, an opportunity to really try and make it go forward.
Yeah. Were you approached about the role by someone, or did you see the role advertised?
No, I just saw it advertised. It was just good timing, really. I was in a situation where I was looking for a new challenge. The business I was involved with, we'd moved it on, and I kind of thought this is a perfect opportunity. The other nice thing, and a little bit selfishly, was that I live in Leeds, and there aren't too many national governing bodies based in Leeds. Yeah. Weightlifting was one. So, you just kind of thought, it'd be a really nice challenge.
Yeah. So when you actually got into the role, were there any surprises, and was it what you expected it to be? Was the organisation in a better or worse state than you were led to believe or that you expected?
I think it's like most interviews, people don't always tell you the full picture.
Yeah.
And if I was brutally honest, did I do enough due diligence? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But actually, no, it was more about the excitement and the positives rather than the negatives. I think, it's like a lot of very small businesses. It needs a little bit of tender loving care and also a little bit of change. And, we shouldn't be frightened of change if it's for the right reasons and it can help move and develop the sport.
Yeah, so I guess from what you're saying there, that just maybe without putting words in your mouth, reading into that there probably, maybe there was more of a challenge there than you expected.
There's an immense number of challenges still.
Yeah.
I've been in the post now 18 months. The time has flown by, and there's been a lot of firefighting, a lot of difficult times, contentious issues to deal with.
Yeah.
But actually, as I say, we can see light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to move forward in a positive manner, and that's the most important thing.
So in your first couple of months in the role, what kind of things immediately jumped out to you as the things that you felt needed to change, the things that you knew could improve, and the things that you knew you wanted to drive forward?
Pretty quickly, having come from a professional sport, and having seen cricket change from a semi-professional to a fully professional competitive sport where and that had taken a generation or two to achieve. Mm-hmm. I noticed very similar areas in weightlifting, massively excited, massively full of potential, but it was still a hobby kind of sport. It wasn't a professional sport.
Yeah.
And that's not having a go at the lifters or the coaches. It's just a general culture within the sport that really needs to be addressed if we're going to be successful on the world stage. And it's not going to happen overnight. But there is an opportunity for people to change a culture.
Yeah.
To be more ambitious, to work harder, and to actually achieve big things on the world stage. I am a great believer that we can compete with the likes of China, North Korea, Russia, even on what at times may be an unfair playing field. Yeah. I still believe if we do the right things well enough and competitively enough, and with the right commitment, we have an opportunity.
Well, I'm going to hold that thought because I'm going to come back to some stuff that's relevant to that in a little bit. But before that, you've mentioned about moving and trying to make the sport into more of a professional sport. And I think one of the things that in my experience, people don't really understand is how weightlifting is funded in this country. And so just briefly, could you just break down the where the funding for British weightlifting comes from, and just exactly how that money can be spent? What restrictions are there on that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like a lot of sports, we have a heavy reliance, and perhaps too big a reliance, on UK Sport and Sport England as our major funders. Sport England have a very straight brief that they're there to try and help sports increase participation. Yeah. So we're governed around our active people survey, which shows at the moment there's about 100,000 people lifting weights every week, or Olympic lifting within weights, not just any free weights, but Olympic lifting, which are pretty good figures, to be fair. But where our remit is very much to grow that, and that's how we're judged by Sport England. It's how we can develop the sport, how we can grow the sport across able-bodied and disabled activities, and also to grow our development pathways so that we're actually getting more elite lifters coming through to the very top. So our funding from Sport England is governed or geared around, specific ring-fence projects, and projects that were signed off prior to my involvement, prior to my post, and that I've very much inherited.
Yeah.
So, we are where we are. We're 2 years down a 4-year cycle. Whether or not we'll have the same opportunities in 2017 when the next bidding process comes round, or there could potentially be a change of government, there could be potentially changes to public funding. Who knows? We don't, that's out of our hands. We can only, I suppose, control what we've got at the moment. Yeah. And unfortunately, although some people may look at it and think, we're getting a big chunk of money from Sport England, and actually it doesn't filter down to the clubs, or it doesn't filter down to individuals. Yeah. It's there very much to try and support the sport from a core administration point of view, but mainly over a number of pre-agreed ring-fenced projects, and they may be like the Strength and Power Series aimed at universities. Mm-hmm. They may be aimed in a small way at a development pathway, but generally speaking, it's not monies that we can utilise as we'd like, or we can alter as we're moving forward.
Yeah, and obviously the other half, I guess, is the UK sport funding.
Absolutely, yeah. So for the elite sport. And that's our elite programme for the leading athletes. We have a programme that's funded by UK Sport. And UK Sport, very simple remit. That's about winning medals at Olympic Games. Yeah. And about making sure Team GB is more successful each Olympic cycle. Yeah. So we're governed there purely on results at World Championships and at Olympic Games. So our targets are very straightforward. We need to get a top 8 finish as a minimum, and possibly 2 top 8 finishes in Rio. And then we are tasked with medaling in Tokyo in 2020. So we've had to change our strategy and our structure, introduce a new elite program aimed really at the female side of the sport, because that's where UK sport felt we had the best opportunity to achieve a top 8 or medal in Tokyo. And we've been working phenomenally hard over the last 6-7 months to put the structures and foundations into place for that program. And that really is about launching a new elite centre out of Loughborough, major championship campaigns, but most importantly, it's about creating a support staff and background staff that can really give the lifters the best chance of being successful when they get on the stage. Yeah, so I mean, again, from a national governing body's point of view, very grateful to the support that we get from public funds. There are no guarantee at any stage, and you have to hit targets. We have to deliver on the pre-agreed areas that we've stated, the milestones that we commit to. And it's rightly so. You shouldn't just expect. There's no guarantees. We rely heavily on hitting targets, and that means that we need our lifters to perform at the very best, our coaches to perform at the very best, and really, for everybody to get behind each other and drive the sport forward. Yeah,
so I mean, just a couple of things I wanted to pick up on what you said there. The first thing was when you mentioned about the Sport England funding, that 100,000 people in the UK doing some form of Olympic lifting in the calendar year, I guess.
No, that's per week.
Per week, okay. So
yeah, somewhere up and down the country per week.
So does that include, say, as an example, would it potentially include someone in a body pump class doing something that approximated to a clean?
Yeah, it would. I mean, this isn't people that are officially members of a British Weightlifting affiliated club.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, our membership is a lot smaller than that. At present, we're around 4,000 members.
Yeah.
Our affiliated clubs are actually rising. It increased by 25% this year, which is really positive.
Yeah.
But you kind of look at, we know full well if there's 100,000 people that claim to be lifting weights every week, and we've only got 4,000 members, we're just scratching at the surface.
Yeah,
and there's a huge amount of potential there.
And I guess I'm just keen to get, I mean, obviously you don't put those criteria in place. That's Sport England.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to get your opinion on that criteria. In that, I mean, if for example we looked at cricket. And we looked at, as we've seen, we've watched, on television, England warming up and things like that. And they've been maybe doing some boxing pad work. When the ABA speak to Sport England, I'm sure that doesn't, some cricketers doing some boxing pad work probably doesn't add to the numbers of people doing boxing in the UK. So,
no, you're 100% right.
So it seems like there's some contradiction there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. And I suppose there has to be some kind of benchmarks. Otherwise, Sport England would find it very difficult to set any criteria and to actually set any targets. Because again, as I said before, you can't just expect to receive money and not actually produce any results. So there has to be some kind of benchmark to start from, and the APS figures seem to be working. They seem to be a fair and balanced picture of what's happening within sport across the board, across all sports. So, we can only go on the information we're given. The difficulty we have is that I would say a lot of our existing whole of sport plan, our Sport England programme, perhaps doesn't give us the best opportunity to talk to that wider audience sufficiently to be able to make sure that more people are actually lifting Olympic weights, doing a snatch or a clean and jerk more regularly, and we can actually start to track them and get them more involved, and that's an area we certainly in the future we would need to look at.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So just a couple of questions that may be a bit more challenging, and hopefully you think are fair questions. The first one is, why was the decision made to let Tamas Feher go as the head coach of the national squad?
A very difficult question, and it's a tough one to have to answer. It was a tough one when the decisions were made.
Sure.
It was a decision that was made on the back of a change in our elite programme strategy. That it was decided that there was no longer a requirement for a head coach as such. And we were looking to move our performance director from a part-time role to a full-time role, and become a more hands-on performance director, and to give him an opportunity to put together his own team of coaches and support staff that he really wanted. And that's not to say that he didn't utilise Tamas's expertise and experience. It was just the fact that the timing had said that we needed to look at potentially a change, and we needed, to look at what was going to be right to make sure we could hit our targets in Rio and our targets in Tokyo.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I guess it relates to that question. I guess looking back at the recent World Championships, my perception of the GB team performance was that by and large, it potentially was somewhat disappointing in that, Gareth Evans failed to total. You have Joe Calvino not making weight, Rebecca Tyler pulling out injured. Zoe obviously didn't lift. And obviously you then couple that with Zoe failing to make weight at the recent European under-23s, I think it was. And obviously this starts to raise a few questions. Firstly, maybe I'm, you see it differently to me, but do you see that performance as less than what should be expected? And if so, what do you attribute it to? Who's accountable for that? And on reflection, does it make you look back on the decision to remove Tamas from his role and have no kind of single accountable national coach as possibly a mistake in hindsight?
To answer the last first, no, it doesn't make me feel as though we made a mistake.
Okay.
As I say, I have a lot of time for Tamas, and he did a really, really good job. But we felt as though we needed to move things forward and look at things in a slightly different way if we were going to be successful. Things take time to bed in. There's been a huge amount of change in our elite program and within British Weightlifting over a short period of time. Realistically, some of the things that Tommy Euler's performance director has put into place have only been in place for 3-4 months, and that's going to not have an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Certainly not an impact overnight. It does take time and it requires a little bit of patience. I would actually say overall there were lots of positives that came out of the World Championships and out of the European juniors and under-23s. There were some negatives and some disappointments which nobody will hide, and nobody will certainly not discuss. But I think the important thing was the reviews that have come out after it means that we're in a much stronger place to move forward.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think from a sports point of view, the positives, Mercy Brown in both the Worlds and the Europeans to break British senior records and personal bests, and lift as well as she did for a young person was outstanding. And some of the guys also, Sonny Webster lifted really well. Adam Matus in his first international lifted really well with personal bests. Owen Boxall, Chris Freebury, nobody let anybody down. And I think, what it showed was actually with a number of young people that are coming through in a really positive fashion. And they will only get better because they will benefit from the foundations that are now in place to give them every opportunity to lift a much better way moving forward.
And I guess obviously from your own background in sport, you would have you were obviously in club cricket setups, county cricket setups where you would have had your head coach, and obviously regardless of whether or not things were their fault or whatever, that is ultimately the person who is accountable for that team's performance. And I think just quickly, I just think that obviously when you don't, it's a different situation now, and there's multiple coaches within the national system. So who is accountable now?
Ultimately, accountable for elite performance is the performance director, and that's why I say earlier, he's got to have his own team, his own backroom staff, and he will stand and fall by his results. It's very simple, very straightforward.
Yeah.
But the reality is it will take a little bit of time for a lot of the things that are now embedded, and a lot of people don't see from behind the scenes. We now have a full-time physio on board for the first time, strength and conditioning person on board for the first time. We've got medical support for the first time. We've got lifestyle support for the first time. We've got sports psychologist support for the first time. We've got a backroom staff now that is far stronger. We've got some really exciting young coaches involved that are looking at things in a slightly different manner. We're picking up more and more data. We're becoming more scientific in our approaches.
Yeah.
It's far more modern than it's ever been, and the facilities, the actual infrastructure of the elite centre has moved on. We took when I first came in, and the initial review I did, we took a lot of feedback from the lifters that didn't like Leeds. They didn't think it was a high performance centre. It wasn't aspirational. So with the lifters themselves didn't like the structure of a head coach and a centralised programme. We listened to that initially. We've changed things around, and we started to change it around to how we would like it to be. At the moment, we haven't got the funding for a fully centralised programme.
Yeah.
The lifters didn't like it, so what we've done, we've actually compromised, and we've gone for a semi-centralised programme where they're in Loughborough for 2 to 3 days a week, and then they're back with their own coaches in their own clubs and their own environment that they're comfortable with. But as a result, what you need is then the buy-in of the international coaches and the club coaches.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the past, to have one head coach, it would have been impossible to get around every club looking after our elite lifters in their own environments as well.
Sure.
So, that was one of the reasons why there was a change in the strategy.
And when you have, it's almost like I think in the sport, in a way, it's almost like the cardinal sin to not make weight. So when you have lifters failing to make weight, obviously something's gone wrong there. And is there a penalty in place for lifters when they don't make weight? And if not, should there be?
It's a tough one again because athletes are not machines. Everybody, whatever walk of life you have good days and bad days. And as a sport, and certainly as a governing body, we have a care of duty towards our athletes to make sure that we're not putting them under too much undue stress and strain to lift if they're not 100% right. And the reality is over the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of lifters, Joe Calvino at the Worlds and then Zoe in the Europeans, miss weight, but it wasn't through anything else other than misfortune. Joe Calvino, it's the first time in 15, 16 years that she missed it by 20 grams, and literally, couldn't have worked any harder to try and get the weight off. If she had got rid of that 20 grams at the last, you'd have been very nervous to send her out onto the platform because there was nothing left in her. She was totally dehydrated and there was nothing there. And that, as I say, would have been wrong for us as a sport to ask her to compete in those conditions. Yeah. As for Zoe was slightly different. She picked up a virus just prior to the Worlds. We, like most sports, it's no different to football. If you're at Real Madrid and Ronaldo as your star player picks up a virus, you take them, you work with them till the very last minute to say, because you want them to play, you want them to lift, they're going to do well. But if it doesn't work, then you have to pull them out at the last moment, and that's what happened at the Worlds. Unfortunately, we wanted to give Zoe the best chance at the Europeans because, again, lifting anything like, she would have won 3 golds, and you don't get that opportunity too often. Yeah. And unfortunately, she hadn't recovered well enough to be able to really concentrate and work to get to shed the couple of kilos in the end that she needed to make weight. And again, it would have been wrong of us as a sport to force her to do that when she wasn't well.
Sure. Okay, so just going back quickly to something you mentioned when we were speaking about funding. A couple of things that obviously the criteria that British Weightlifting has committed to doing everything it can to meet in terms of performance targets over the next X amount of years towards the Japan Olympics. And also at one point you mentioned, or you used the phrase, not always a fair playing field, I think, hopefully not to misquote you, but I don't know if you've seen the stuff in the press today coming out of Germany, which has raised some quite serious questions regarding anti-doping efforts in Russian sport. And these were quite similar to some of the accusations made by the German Federation in 2012 in an open letter to the IWF regarding how serious the IWF's own stances on anti-doping, and they cited some quite compelling statistics pulled from the IWF's own website. With this in mind, is there a doping problem in global weightlifting, and can clean British weightlifters realistically compete for medals on a global stage?
I think British weightlifters can compete. It's not too long ago that the same questions were raised in cycling, and David Brailsford said quite openly, yep, there's an issue, but we have to find a way around it. We have to be smarter in the way we train, our approach, our preparation. We have to find ways that we can compete on the international landscape, and that's exactly what they did, and they've been phenomenally successful. So I see no reason why British weightlifting can't compete. We've worked phenomenally hard in this country to be clean, and we've a really good record. Certainly compared to the rest of the world, we are regarded now as a clean sport in the UK. But we've got to keep working tremendously hard at that, and we've got to keep educating our lifters and our coaches to maintain that. And certainly with the 2015 Code of Conduct, WADA Code of Conduct changing, where bans for intentional use of performance and enhancing substances are going to increase from 2 to 4 years as a minimum, then we have to make sure that our lifters are even more aware of the potential risks and pitfalls. And we've just got to keep going. We're doing a good job as regards keeping it clean in the UK at the moment, and all we can do is keep promoting that and hoping that other countries will come with us. There is sadly still an issue, not just in weightlifting, across all sport around the world, and it's one of those unfortunate things that we can only hope that the authorities, our international federations and WADA in particular, keep pushing the positive stories and educating people to try and avoid it.
Yeah, I just have a suggestion for you that I'd like to get your perspective on. I can log on to the IWF website and I can see a list of the who, where and when of every drug test carried out under the IWF's auspices. Yeah. I can log on to the British Drug-Free Powerlifting Association's website and get the same information regarding the tests that they've carried out. Personally, I believe it should be the same with British weightlifting. I think I should be able to log on to britishweightlifting.org and find a list of who was tested, when they were tested, where that was, whether it was in competition or out of competition, and what the result was. What do you think? And is this something we can and should be doing?
It's something. I have no issue with being transparent and open and honest. I would wonder whether or not it may well be on. It may well be on the UCAD, the UK anti-doping website. I think that all that information will be there anyway.
Well, is it?
Maybe we just need, we need to check, and maybe we need to see if that is the case. Just put a link through. I've no problem with it. I think we should be proud of our record at the moment, and we should be promoting the fact that it's drug free, the sport.
Well, this is what I think personally. The reason I asked that question is, without going into too much detail, is that I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request a couple of years back regarding trying to get this information from UK Anti-Doping because they don't publish it, and I was balked at every opportunity or every turn, rejected twice. Eventually I appealed and was given the information, and then UK Anti-Doping appealed and it was rescinded. So that information isn't out there publicly, but British Weightlifting does have the power to publish that.
The difficulty we have is a lot. One, we don't have a database of historic testing.
No.
And that's something that sadly I haven't inherited. There's no database of historic records. So whatever we did, we'll be starting from scratch. And secondly, that obviously the testing is not done by us, it's done by UCAD.
Yeah.
So a lot of that information is kept by UCAD. We don't get, all we get would be a confirmation of a positive test or confirmation of testing for our elite lifters who are on the Adams scenario, where it's their whereabouts and they can be tested at any time. So that we don't get lists of people that have been tested at open competitions or at their own gyms or whatever they're chosen to be tested. We don't receive that information, so British Weightlifting wouldn't be able to publish it.
Okay, that's fair enough. just quickly, do you think we do enough in the organisation to develop younger coaches? And the reason I say that is I think I don't feel in my experience that there's been enough put in place to bring through the next generation of coaches that are going to go on and be able to be part of a national setup, for example. What's your perspective on that?
No, you're 100% right, and it's something that we're working on at the moment to change. We've got a programme in place already that is starting to not just source and find the best young coaches, but we're actually working with them already, and we're looking to move them on. So we've got a number of what we would class as development coaches that we're looking to utilise in international events. But we would look at, say, I don't know, a European juniors or a Commonwealth Championships as ideal positions to give younger coaches the chance to work with some more senior experienced international coaches and develop their careers. Where it's a bit like our lifters. We need to find the next generation of lifters. And, certainly from a coaching perspective, we need to find the next generation of coaches as well.
Sure, okay. All right, so in terms of plans for the future, since you've come on board, I mean, I've been incredibly positive and have really felt that you've been a real breath of fresh air, really, for the organisation. And I think what you did with the British Championships in terms of the presentation and the scale of the event was fantastic. So what are your plans for the future? How do you see the sport growing? And what do you hope your legacy will be?
My legacy, I hope I can leave the sport in a stronger position than when I found it. I hope that not just with more lifters in physical numbers, I hope we could be financially sustainable. We would have as I say, although very grateful to the support we get from UK Sport and Sport England, it would be nice if we could be independent and we could drive our own development without having to rely on public funds all the time. So that's very much an aim, that we grow the sport in terms of size, but also financially. I think the sport is massively exciting. There's no reason to me why we shouldn't be seen regularly on television. Across sports channels, not just in the UK, but further afield. But I think to achieve that, we may have to look at our competition structure, and we may have to look at our club structure as well. So there's plenty of work to do. I think it's massively exciting. We've got, I kind of look, for example, I look at, say, sports like darts, where they can sell 10,000 seats in an arena every week. I think if that's the case, there's no reason why we shouldn't be looking and aiming to do the same for weightlifting someday. To see how intense, how exciting, how phenomenally difficult it is when you see somebody on stage, isolated on stage all by themselves with only 6 lifts, potentially only 3 lifts if they don't get it right. I just think it makes for a really dramatic and exciting sport, and people that see it live all enjoy it.
I mean, has there been any plans to try and get some television coverage for weightlifting in any outlet?
No, there has. I have to say, we've had some initial discussions with all the major broadcasters. And I think it was really encouraging to see the BBC at the British Senior Championships for 2 days last year. Yeah. And, we picked up some nice little snippets. We've actually picked up, our relationship with the BBC has grown tremendously over the last 12 months. And we've had some really good coverage, not just as not so much as if they were filming a championships, but actually, programs aimed at covering the profiles of individuals and weightlifting in general. We've improved no end. So we're actually getting there slowly but surely. And again, it will take time. We have to build an audience, and we have to show that we can put on a spectacle that people enjoy and people want to come and see. And that bit at the moment is still a distance off, Yeah. When you look back 6 months to the last British Seniors, I was told by the traditional members of weightlifting, you'll never get anybody to go watch at the Rico. Nobody will buy a ticket, because nobody ever had. But actually, we sold 350 tickets, which was brilliant. Yeah. This year, I'd like to be thinking we can sell 700.
Yeah.
And we keep building from there. But, we were starting from scratch. And really, what we were doing for the British seniors should be the standard for every British championship, whether it's British schools, right the way through the age groups, right up to the seniors, because it's just as important for the youngsters who are sent off in the first major competitions to inspire them to get involved with weightlifting and want to stick with it and perform really well.
Sure, and I know when we'd spoken once in the past, I mean, we talked a little bit about plans you had or ambitions you had to potentially host some major championships in the UK. Has there been any further development regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to host, potentially, World Seniors at some stage. I think at this stage, we need to grow the sport a little bit more. We need to see what happens with government funding moving forward, because we would have a big reliance on some support from UK sport major events.
Yeah.
If that was the case, I mean, I look next year, the Olympics, the World Championships, World Seniors are in Houston.
Yeah.
But the US have guaranteed 1.1 million in media rights, TV rights to the IWF.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, we don't have that kind of relationship with the media and TV in the UK to be able to guarantee anywhere near that kind of figure.
Yeah.
So, there are challenges that go with it. We could certainly host a World Juniors or a European Seniors, but we wouldn't get any kind of funding or help from UK sport to do that. And as a sport at the moment, as a governing body, we don't have the reserves to underwrite any kind of competition.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, Ashley, thanks so much for your time. I'm not going to take too much more of it up. Just briefly, is there any last kind of things you wanted to say to the people in weightlifting within this country, the lifters, the coaches, the people that support the sport, and anything you wanted to plug, any websites or anything like that you wanted to get out there?
Well, we've got a new website. We've relaunched our BritishWeightlifting.org site. We're starting to really push our YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, so people can follow us far more than they ever used to. Our communication, I think, is improving. We're still a distance to go, but we are getting slightly better. To be fair, all I would say is, I'd like people to get on the bus with us. We're at the start of a journey, but it can hopefully be a really long, positive and enjoyable journey. And that's the main aim. At the end of it, all we want to see and all I want to see is the sport develop, grow to where it should be and I guess the recognition it should, but also that we can see some really exciting successful lifting on the international stage.
Sure, that's brilliant, Ashley. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for answering all the questions frankly. Good luck with things, and maybe we'll catch up with you again down the line.
Pleasure, anytime.
Brilliant, take care.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.